I always felt like I was a normal kid. I didn't realize I had one hand. And yeah, I might have had a realization, but I wouldn't have known as much had everyone not reminded me of it all the time. Here I am, just a normal kid trying to do normal things. And, other people or kids are like, wait, stop. You have one hand. Do you think you can do this? And that wasn't even a thought in my head. It's like, I'm going to do this.
Aloha and welcome to the Sick Burn Podcast, where we explore the bright side to life's darkest moments. Some people talk about fighting through adversity. Geoff Real lives it. Born with one hand, a survivor of multiple health battles, and a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, Geoff has turned every challenge into an opportunity to grow, teach, and inspire others. In this episode, we talk about what it means to redefine strength, how to turn disadvantages into advantages, and the power of becoming the coach you wish you had. So please enjoy this conversation with Geoff Real. Aloha, Geoff. Thanks so much for being here, man. I discovered you through our friends Matt and Leia, who did this incredible documentary about you, The One-Handed Fighter. I've seen it twice now. It's just so damn good. You've probably seen it, 100 times at this point. But yeah, dude, just thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Awesome to, share my story and, be able to be a part of this experience.
Yeah, man. But I mean, you're truly an inspiration. It's just crazy. I want to take it back to the beginning though, because obviously we got the documentary One-Handed Fighter. You've been living with it. Tell me about what it was like growing up, and did you notice anything different about you when you're growing up? Or did you think like I'm just a normal kid and there's nothing that I have to overcome per se?
I always felt like I was a normal kid, but as you may recall in the film, I said, I didn't realize I had one hand, and yeah, I might have had a realization, but I wouldn't have known as much had everyone not reminded me of it all the time.
Right.
Here I am, just a normal kid trying to do normal things, and other people or kids are like, wait, stop. You have one hand. Do you think you can do this? And that wasn't even a thought in my head. It's like, I'm going to do this,
Right. Yeah.
So, there was a birthday party I was invited to, and there was indoor rock climbing. And my friend's mom asked my mother if like I could handle doing indoor rock climbing, if there was like a limitation on that, being capable of doing that activity.
Hmm.
And my mom's all like, well, we don't know, but let's see. We'll still show up for the birthday party.
Yeah.
And as soon as they strap me in, I like just charge up the wall
Yeah.
without any issues, and everyone's just like, all right, he can do it. All right,
Yeah.
so no
All
no
right. He's a
issues.
beast.
Yeah, no questions there. So
That's
and for
amazing.
me, I'm a little bit, as a kid, I was very rowdy. I would try to do like, risky things.
Hmm.
So I remember at the indoor rock climbing, I tried to do there was like a little cave that you can like kind of, there was like a crash mat in the cave. So I tried doing like a running up the wall and doing a backflip,
Right. Yeah.
and they're like, yeah, don't do that, so
Yeah.
um,
Take it easy, man. I don't know if our release form covers that.
for sure. So a little bit more adventurous than the normal kiddo.
Yeah.
Um, but that was always just my vibe.
Yeah. That's amazing, man. So you discover wrestling in high school, right?
Yes, actually middle school.
Middle school. Okay. Right on. Is that where the kind of fight journey begins?
So actually, I was really into growing up. I was inspired by Ninja Turtles
Yeah.
and
We got that in
especially.
common. I saw that in a
Yeah.
documentary. I was like, my man right there.
Yeah, no, I love Ninja Turtles, and that was my jam. But also, the Jackie Chan movies, like Rumble in the Bronx.
All time favorite. That's
Yeah,
incredible. Yeah.
and then all the other ones he did were badass. So I was
Yeah.
always into like fight choreography or just fighting in general, and I just always was into movies that had any type of martial arts. And I was into WWF at the time, like fifth
Mhm.
and sixth grade. And I would, try these moves out
Mhm.
on the other kids, to the point where I would get in trouble. I would make kids cry. There was a thing called the four-figured leg lock.
Yeah,
And now it's funny because I do actually leg lock in jujitsu.
yeah. Right.
So, it kind of makes sense. Um,
The signs were there, man.
they were for sure. So, one of my friends' dads was actually not, uh, you know, perturbed or annoyed that I'm like being rough. He's actually laughing and smiling. And after he sees me grappling with like the other kiddos, he's like, "Hey, Geoff, you should probably consider going out for real wrestling,
Okay.
when you get to middle school."
Yeah.
He's like, wrestling is available at that, age and grade. He's like, you should go out for that. He's like, he said that he felt like I would do good at that. So,
Sure.
so of course, when middle school comes around, I move away from Illinois. That's where I was at the time. I moved to Arizona, and I do go out for wrestling seventh grade, but I go out for like one practice, and it was exhausting. It was probably one of the most exhausting things I'd ever done.
Mhm.
Also, I live in Yuma, Arizona, and it's like deathly hot. So, you
Okay.
know,
So it's from Chicago to Yuma at this point.
well, like St. Louis area out in the Illinois, like so,
Okay.
where St. Louis is, that's where I was close to in Illinois, right across the Mississippi.
So you're just traveling around a bunch, man. Yeah, you were bouncing around. I think in the documentary you say you're an army brat because that's not easy, right? I think that's takes a lot of I mean, it's just a lot of adapting to new situations on top of all that. How do you think that affects you at this age?
It affected me, quite a bit. I was, a little sad, a little disappointed that I had to move and lose my friends. And, I mean, I even had like, at the time, like a little girlfriend,
Uh,
in like sixth grade. Um,
nice.
so, it was always hard to leave friends and make new ones. I had lived in Yuma from I forget what year range, but I think I was, like 4 to like 7, four to
Okay.
eight that I'd lived there, and then we moved to Illinois, and
Hmm.
then I was there from like 8 till like 12, and then moved back right before seventh grade. When we moved back to Yuma at that time, and I had to make friends again. But
Hmm.
luckily, because I had the past history in Yuma, when I went to middle school, there were some people that I recognized from elementary. Like,
Oh,
oh, like we went to Ronald Reagan together. And they're like, oh, yeah, that's right. So it was kind of cool, but I adjusted quite a bit. And at that time, I really got into new metal, like Korn, Limp Bizkit,
yeah,
Slipknot,
yeah, man.
and then all the other like metal bands that were in that scene, like System of a Down,
Mhm.
and Tool, and Deftones.
Some amazing bands in there. I think my first concert ever was a Tool concert.
Really, mine
Yeah.
too.
Oh, really?
Well, it was my second one, but I was my first Ozfest that I went to.
Okay.
Yeah, but I didn't even know who Ozzy was. My parents took me at like fifth grade,
Oh,
and
sick.
so they're like telling me, "Yeah, this is so and so," and I'm like just brand new to all of it. But I went to a Tool concert and I had no idea of this.
Hmm.
And Maynard James Keenan is one of my favorite singers of all time.
Hmm.
Plus, he's a black belt in jujitsu.
Whoa,
Uh,
I didn't know that.
yeah, he
Wow.
actually my wife and I were offered a job at his gym in Cottonwood, Arizona.
Okay.
Yeah, which would have
Wow.
been cool, but we wanted to come back to San Diego,
Right, right.
recently. But um
Wow.
but yeah, during the, middle school era, I was into all those bands, and I went to Ozfest again in middle school. That was an experience. And then I went again in high school. And so my parents are
Nice.
really cool about taking me to these concerts. But during that time frame when I moved back to Arizona, I was really immersed into that scene
Hmm.
because I was missing my friends quite a bit. And that
Mm.
the music's kind of like moody,
Yeah, yeah.
dark, so it feeds into like the preteen and teenager angst,
Yeah,
so
totally, man.
my parents were like, man, he's getting a a little too dark, too into the music. My walls were covered with posters. Like there
Okay.
was not 1 inch of wall that was visibly seen.
Yeah, yeah.
Even the ceiling. It was
Oh,
kind of
boy.
nuts, but
So it was just like completely black in there.
yes.
Probably now everything was dark. Were they worried about you in terms of like, is he getting too emotional or too dark or
Yeah,
you think
definitely.
so? Okay.
That was definitely a theme in my life, especially because of the adversity and hardships that I, had faced.
Mhm.
But, I kind of got over that, little, weird moody period. I mean, I struggled with, some emotional just knowing how to process my emotions well,
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
just talking to people and
Mhm.
finding the right outlets,
Yeah.
so that was kind of like my thing then.
Yeah. How do you think it would come out? Because I agree with you. I think I don't know anybody really in middle school is perfectly adjusted. You know, what I mean? Like you're going through puberty, you're learning all these new things. Like, yeah, you're all of a sudden all your emotions are spiking. And I definitely went through it too. I was kind of a chubby kid, and then I got to middle school, still chubby. And then from like eighth grade to freshman year in high school, like I grew 6 inches, and all of a sudden I looked completely different. And all of a sudden I felt like more confident now. But I think that time through middle school, plus I was kind of like you. I was going from like one school to the next, and I had friends from when I was a little kid, but I hadn't seen them in years.
Right.
So yeah, it was just like I felt like really angry, and I don't know if people knew that, but it's when I started getting into punk metal too, or Blink 182 and saw Tool and all that
Yeah.
stuff. But I think what kind of got me through that was like kind of dedicating myself to a sport. Like I got really into, I was playing hockey, then I was skateboarding a ton. I was like, all right, I'm gonna be one of the best skateboarders. And then saw all these high school kids that were like so much better than me. I was like, yeah, I'm never gonna be that. And
Right.
that got me into football. And then that's where like my whole, I feel like career or like just trajectory in high school changed. Cause all of a sudden, like I wanted to be good at it. I could be physical, I could get out my aggression. And then also like it just gave me a lot of confidence. And yeah, I don't know. Was it the same for you when you started doing wrestling, or what was the shifting point where you're like, all right, I kind of know this is kind of more of who I want to be.
So like seventh grade, I kind of had the weird, moody era, and then like eighth grade, it was different. Definitely coming out of my shell a little bit more. However, that's when 9/11 happened, and my dad, he was in the Marine Corps for 30 years. So during that time, he's doing a normal deployment, but 9/11 happens, and then he has to change his like his unit, and everyone else that's in the military has to change whatever they're doing to now shifting to the Middle East.
Yeah.
So it was definitely an interesting time. It wasn't like the worst that I had felt, but we got through it. Dad came back, everything was good, and then I went to Catholic school,
Oh
and
wow.
so I had to change my surroundings and group of friends yet again.
Yeah.
However, some of the kids that I went to middle school with, they ended up at the
Oh,
Catholic school.
all right.
Some of them weren't necessarily like people I hung out with on a regular, but I still knew them.
Man, that must have been a huge shift. So you're in public school, then dad leaves, then you go to a Catholic school.
Yeah.
Man, that must have been a trip. Was that a hard? I mean, I think undoubtedly it was a hard transition because I went from like Christian private school to a public middle school.
Right.
Similar to you, I only knew like a few people, and I ended up making some of my best friends ever there. But man, that was a hard shift. How'd you adapt to it?
I just, I let my music playing kind of put me, I guess, on the radar, so to speak.
Okay.
And it was actually I went out for like the school choir, and where like, people, there's like the dancers and the singers, and then there's like the musicians who are like in the band that provide the music.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I was going out for bass.
Okay.
And so I remember I played Carousel from Blink 182, and everyone kind of sees that I'm playing the song,
Yeah.
this, and it's a pretty cool little intro. It sounds nice. Every bass player who likes Blink plays this part, and people were like, wow, who is this kid? He
Yeah.
has one hand. He's playing, Blink 182. Um,
That's
and
awesome.
so that kind of put me on the radar with the other like musicians or even, because the school was small. It was like I was the third class to exist at this private Catholic high school.
Wow.
And so when we graduated, the slogan was third time's the charm, especially because we were
Yeah.
the Yuma Catholic Shamrocks.
Okay, okay.
We were the third class, so it was a very small school. So pretty much, some of the guys that like played guitar in the choir were also jocks. They were in the football team.
Okay.
Um, so, I kept myself busy with sports, with music, school, and then also trying to, I guess please the Catholic Christian identity,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
and especially, the music I had mentioned that I was into. Oh
Right.
man, that was such an issue
I'm
being
I'm
being
sure.
at Catholic school, like, hey, that music's terrible. That music's evil. Like
Yeah.
you shouldn't welcome that type of energy in your life. You need to throw all your music away. And I'm like, what? Like my parents are gonna kill me if
Yeah.
I throw all my CDs away.
I know. Tell me about when I was Christian private school. When I was in elementary school, I was in the bathroom. I was just peeing. Like a little kid. I might have been like 6 years old or something. Dropped my pants down. I was wearing either Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles or Power Rangers underwear, and I got detention because they're like, "That's promoting violence. That's promoting fighting, whatever."
Wow.
So yeah, I know it was like a trip, right? And you're
Yeah.
like, "Wait, what?" Like this is like a normal thing. All these kids are like this or whatever, right? So how do you start adjusting in your head, right? Because I think you're like, wait, this makes me feel good. I like this. You're saying it's wrong. Are you looking to your parents to tell you it's all right? Are you looking to friends? Or what are you telling yourself to be like, no, we're cool. Like, we're all good. Just keep doing you.
That was actually pretty hard to figure out what was, the way to go. I just ultimately knew that like, okay, yeah, yeah, I hear what you're saying, as far as like the Catholic people, I'm like, I hear what you're saying, but I gotta live with my parents at home. If I start tossing all these CDs that they paid for, that's gonna be a problem. So like,
Definitely.
yeah, you may try to judge me, but they're the jury,
Yeah,
so
I
they're
like
gonna
that.
they're gonna press me in any sort of way. And I mean, even one time I'd lost all my CDs. Like I had one of my knucklehead friends was said that they were, they had my backpack and then we left it on a wrestling meet. And then
Mm,
one of the wrestling coaches, who's like now a priest, he's all like, "Man, you don't need those CDs." He's like, "Yeah,
uh,
it's honestly better for your salvation and your soul." And I'm like, "Sure, but that's like in 90 years. I still got to deal with my parents for the next like however long."
tonight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm like, "Cool story, bro. You're not really helping me here. You're actually stressing me out even more."
Yeah.
Um,
Wow.
but it was just kind of like the battle I was in. And then, people would be like, "That's not cool. Don't play that music." And it's like, it's just music,
Right, right, right.
And like later on, I saw this movie called Pain and Gain. It's with The Rock and Mark Wahlberg, right?
Yeah, I've never seen that
And
one, but it looked good.
and there's like a scene where they're like, everyone know Christian music sucks, and then The Rock, who's like a super Christian, is like, "What? Who says that?" You know, and it's like, I listen to good music.
Right.
And I'm not saying there's not Christian music exists that's not good.
Yeah.
POD
Mhm.
was, one of the few Christian
Oh,
bands,
yeah.
you know.
Yeah. Down here, we got like Switchfoot too, that everybody
Yeah.
loves. I mean, they have a banger of a song.
As I Lay Dying, who was a metalcore band, the band was Christian, even though the singer went and, you
Did some
know,
crazy
yeah,
shit.
for sure he did.
Yeah.
So, but it's like, there were bands that were Christian that I listened to, especially that metalcore scene that I got
Mhm.
really into.
Mhm.
A lot of those bands were Christian, but I didn't listen to them because they were Christian. I listened to them because their music was epic.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
the double bass pedal and the tremolo picking. I mean, I was just my face would melt off when I would listen to that type of music. I'm like, wow, this is some of the best things I've ever heard. It's like classical medieval music turned into metal. You know?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you're right. Like, it's epic. It makes you feel something. It makes you feel like, yeah, that's how I feel right now.
Yes.
And it's kind of amazing because I didn't think we'd go to how much music affected you, but it seems like music really was like a sanctuary for you.
It was.
Did that kind of transition in a way to more wrestling or being on the mat? Or like were you able just to connect those two?
I just enjoyed, playing music. I wanted to be a rock star originally.
Mm,
And after, I went out for the wrestling team my freshman year, and I placed at regionals. I got like second or third. And
nice.
then I went to state. I was like one of two wrestlers that was able to go to state. I lettered as a freshman. So that was cool. And, when I am pretty much going into, I'm in my sophomore year of high school, and now I start having health issues. And
Mm,
this is where like my GI issues come in. I was running cross country and I'm on my way to a meet, and all of a sudden now I have like this stomach pain. And long story short, they take my gallbladder out, and now I'm
wow.
diagnosed with, a rare liver disorder called primary sclerosing cholangitis. And this takes me out of sophomore year wrestling. And I
Wow.
feel that I'm going to just kill it the
Mhm.
second year because I already went to state as a freshman. I
Right.
had high hopes for myself.
Mhm.
And so I couldn't really do much. I was sidelined. I wasn't able to do any really physical activity. So I really went into my music and got really good at playing guitar and bass during this time frame.
Wow.
And of course my music taste lightened up.
Mhm.
This was during like the emo scene and phase. So, I had an acoustic guitar. I played a lot of Dashboard Confessional.
Yeah.
All the girls love that.
As a
Yeah.
lot of us did. Yeah, yeah, definitely. I mean, yeah, very emo, but also very like emotional, perfect for like long drives with your girl or your
Yes.
boyfriend, whatever, right? So, what is it about you? Because it seems like that would be so hard, right? Like you now have this amazing goal, you crush it as a freshman. You're now told you're not able to do it. High school is one of those times though, where it's like you kind of do, you're still figuring it out. So you feel like there's a lot of possibilities, but there's so many people who just kind of give up. How come you just decided to shift into music? Like what is it in you that you're like, I'm going to just crush it at this? Like I can't do this anymore. I'm gonna crush it at this.
I mean, I really had no choice, and I had all this free time,
Mm,
and also my parents were very overprotective, and so outings with friends were very minimal, and especially when before I was able to drive. And also I lived on the Marine base in Yuma, and you have to have access to get in the base.
right.
So my a lot of my friends, I was like maybe one of two or three Marine kids that were going to the Catholic school,
Mm,
actually living on base. So it was very hard for my friends never were able to get on the base, and
wow.
so I pretty much have a lot of this alone time. I'd be online. This is when AIM was a thing.
Yeah, yeah,
Dialing up, pissing my
right.
mom off, and she can't get,
You can't use the phone.
yeah,
Yeah, you can't fax something or print something. You're like, Mom, I'm using AIM. I'm using
right.
AOL right now.
And especially when my dad would deploy, and this is like post 9/11, so I think he deployed, I think once or twice after he was in deployment, and then he went on a couple more deployments. During that time frame when he's gone, if I'm online and he's trying to call,
Oh yeah,
right? This
yeah.
is like, during these like the time frame we're in now,
Hmm.
guys can FaceTime, there's a lot more accessibility for communication these days.
Yeah.
Back then it's like my dad had to wait in line for a payphone,
Oh wow.
or some type of phone he had to wait in line for.
Yeah.
And my mom would get like an email from him saying, "Hey, I'll be able to call on this day
Mhm.
during this
At this
time,
time, yeah.
so make sure that you're available,
Mhm.
and so of course I'm online, trying to talk to my friends, and
Yeah, yeah.
then it's like, why are you online? I need the phone line free. Your dad could be calling,
Right,
and
right.
this is his only chance. So, definitely pose some issues there.
Yeah.
So
At this time, I completely get it. I've lived through those times too, man, where you're waiting for the dial up and you're like, why isn't it connecting? And you turn everything off and whatever. But are you and your mom getting like really close at this point? Like, how are you and your mom Because it's just you two, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
It honestly, so, my dad would tend to spoil me with certain things. I was, into the music scene. So I would get Hit Parader magazine,
Mhm.
Circus. These were like the magazines I'd pull all the pictures from and put them on my walls.
Nice.
Right. And so he would get me, and there was another one called Metal Edge. And I'm surprised I even know the names of
I
these.
know. I was like, dang, man, this is like it was just yesterday for you.
Yeah. But yeah, I would get like all three of these mags every month. And so when my dad would leave for deployment, my mom's like, hey, sorry, we're saving money. No more
Oh, shoot,
magazines.
you cut it down?
Yeah.
Wow.
And so I'm all like, cool. Like, this is like one of the few things I enjoy, that I'm able to do. It's like I have to ask permission to leave the house,
Right.
So, and I'm like, middle school or high school time, it's like most boys just leave.
Uh-huh.
So, it was definitely a little bit of a trying time when my dad would leave because my mom, bless her heart, she would definitely have the house in order,
Mhm.
mow the lawn, make sure that bills are paid. And something that would happen with a lot of spouses while their men would be gone would, they would dwindle the bank account.
Mhm.
Maybe there'd be some infidelity.
Mhm.
Just
Yeah.
terrible things would happen while someone's out on deployment.
Yeah,
My
for
mother
sure.
was none of those things. She was completely faithful, saved money.
Wow.
So when my dad would get back, he'd be like, "Wow, bank account looks great." I'm like, "Wow, what, like, things are paid off? Amazing." And I'm like, "Yeah, life was so great when you were gone." You know?
Yeah, I'm glad you're happy. What
Yeah.
about me, man? She sounded like an incredible kind of role model too, though. Like your dad obviously is serving the country. He's putting his life in danger. He's doing these incredible things. And then, but your mom is kind of showing you like kind of what responsibility is like too.
For sure. I mean, there's sacrifice on his end, and
Hmm.
there's sacrifices at home with the family,
Yeah.
which,
Yeah.
now, talking about this provides a little bit more clarity that everyone pitches in,
Hmm.
especially when we're in a military household.
Right.
Um, Although at the time, like, I didn't feel that way. And you would see other people, obviously on the surface, you can only assume, okay, hey, they seem to be happy. They seem to be doing all right. Dad's gone, but they're still enjoying life, and I didn't exactly feel the same way. Like I said, bless my mother's heart, but sometimes I would be guilted to, have to stay with her. We would
Uh,
sleep in the living room on
oh,
the
wow.
couches, and we would pass out to the TV being on. So
Huh.
it's like a habit now I have, and it drives my wife nuts. But like, this
Yeah.
is how I like pass out, where it's like I have like
A little bit
this,
of noise and the
yeah.
static. And was that just to make her feel like comfortable? She didn't feel comfortable
No,
in the
yeah, she
room
did.
and stuff?
She didn't sleep in her own bed for like the entire 6 months that my dad would be gone, and then
Wow.
so there was one time I tried. I'm like, all right, time to go to bed, and she starts getting emotional, and she's like, please don't leave me, please stay
Mm,
with me. You can have the big couch. You
yeah.
can watch whatever you want because she had the remote control,
Yeah.
so she'd give me the sticks, and I'm like, all right, I
Uh,
guess I just want to
yeah.
go in my own room.
Yeah.
I just want to like be by myself, but
Dang,
you
dude.
know,
That's a lot of pressure though on a young kid. I mean, and props to you for doing it. Props to you for like recognizing it and how everybody was doing their best. But man, that must have been a lot of pressure. And at this time, right? Like you're not able to do your sport. I don't know how you stayed like your mind stayed in the game other than you probably really were just dumping everything into music.
dumping everything into music, and then once I was able to like get back into sports, I did
Mm.
immediately.
Oh
I
yeah.
mean, I think sophomore year I was able to play baseball for the first time ever.
Oh, like towards the end of your recovery or the end of the
Yeah,
year.
yeah. Once
Nice.
they cleared me from like all the surgeries and stuff,
Mm,
I was like, all right, cool, gonna go out for baseball.
mm,
And I was a runner, like I was a good runner, but
mhm.
I just hated running, and so I wanted to try and do
Yeah.
another sport that a lot of people say like, I don't know if that's the best sport for you, but
Right.
I went out for baseball and I enjoyed probably every second of it.
It's awesome.
And and I still did track. I mean, there was actually I think a couple seasons where I ended the baseball season and I was still able to jump into the track season.
Wow.
Just
Like
because,
immediately straight
yeah,
to track. Wow.
you
That's
know,
crazy.
so like there was one year I did four sports. I think I did football, wrestling, baseball, and track.
Wow.
You know, when there's typically three
That's crazy.
seasons, you
Right,
know.
right.
Meanwhile, playing music and, junior year, I went out for football for the first time ever. And I'd done cross country previously. I
Mhm.
went to even UCSD cross country camp.
Wow.
And, but, of course, the GI issues took me out. And then also
Damn.
my first season of football, one of my best friends, he's running down the line and I put my head down to take him out.
Mhm.
And, I end
Don't
up
do that anymore, kids.
yeah, and I break
Yeah.
my collarbone. And so it takes
Oh,
me out of football
yeah.
and the first half of my junior year of wrestling season,
Dang.
So once again I'm
Oh,
winged,
yeah.
but then as soon as I'm cleared, like I'm pretty much getting into school fights cuz I have all this like anger, you know.
Yeah,
And I'm like, "I'm good, doc. I've been like scrapping in the locker
yeah.
room."
Right,
You
right,
know?
right. They're like, that's not what we want you to do, but like, all right, man. So that's how you were kind of processing things a little bit, right? Like, I mean, I'm guessing, yeah, it's so frustrating. You finally get back to a place where like I'm good, and then you get injured again or health issues. Like, how could you not be pissed? I guess. Like, I feel like pissed for you at this time,
For sure.
and is that at that moment? I'm guessing that's just kind of how you're processing the frustration, right?
Absolutely. Definitely bit of a angry teenager at that point. I think my
Mm,
dad, so he was there for the football injury, and I think like towards the end of the football season, he went on deployment. So I was by myself with mom again, and and I'm not able to wrestle. I'm like kind of having like, I'm trying to find myself with like dating girls and
mm-hmm,
like kind of feeling insecure about obviously having one hand and then now all
mm-hmm.
these other issues I'm dealing with.
How do you get over that though? Like, I mean, I'll be honest. It's like, my accident didn't happen that long ago. It was only 6 years ago. But as soon as I woke up and I saw, oh, I'm missing fingers and everything, it was like, man, how am I ever gonna step out in public again? So for you, was it more mission over the uncomfortability, or like, what was it where you're like, I'm just gonna keep going after it? Like, I'm gonna keep talking to girls. I'm gonna keep trying sports. Like, was there somebody that's like, did somebody say something to you? Did you read something, or were you just like, screw it, I'm just gonna try?
I definitely had some dark moments, and the it's funny because my good best friend that like I try to tackle down the line who had like tons of football experience.
Yeah.
Uh, I was dating his cousin, and there was like
Oh, that's
some.
why he slammed you.
Well, like we him and I have always been cool. We even talked still to this day.
Oh, nice. That's
Him
awesome.
him and his kid both train jujitsu. And his kid's like a great wrestler now.
That's awesome.
His cousin I dated, and like I was, we were, there was obviously like the high school, drama, whatever. But that, definitely, hurt me and put me in a dark place. And of course, added to the insecurity of like, well, who is gonna love a one-handed, guy with health issues,
Right. Yeah.
And so it definitely got worse before I got better, but
Hmm.
it just got to a point where you know, I just started to not care about anything, even progress. But even with that mindset, I still did music, I still did sports, but I had this mindset where it's like, well, you know, like who cares at the end of the day.
Hmm.
But I think this started to add some, I don't know, give me some sort of confidence to a degree, even though it was like rebellious
Mm.
confidence.
Right.
But I was playing local shows with metal bands. I was a
Nice.
singer of one band, and everyone's like, "Dude, who is this? Who is this guy? And what is this band?"
Yeah.
And then I started playing bass for another band, and that just took off. And
Wow.
so I went back to like football, and people were like, "Dude, you went out for football again? You got hurt last year, you know."
Right.
And it even like that first time, my mom's all like, "You're gonna hurt yourself. You're
Hmm.
gonna hurt yourself." And then when I hurt myself, she's like, I told you so.
Oh, so you do eventually kind of get injured senior year playing
Oh
football?
yeah, well I break my collarbone. That
Uh,
takes me out the first.
Again?
No, no. So that was the first
Okay.
injury. So
Okay.
I go
Yeah.
back out senior year, and everyone's like, "You're crazy. Why would you go back out?" And I'm like, "Cause you only live once, you know." And
Right.
so
Before like the YOLO was a thing,
yeah,
you were already thinking about that.
100%. And
Wow.
so
It's
I
awesome.
actually have a one offensive play that the coach gives me, and I run a 50-yard touchdown.
Wow.
And
Wow.
and then also they do a news, piece on me, and then they capture me at one of my medal shows along with
Dang.
running this 50-yard touchdown, and I have like the full front page of the sports section,
Dang. That's awesome.
and so this like kind of like, I guess sets me up for more confidence, and now people are kind of like looking at me a little different, and
Yeah.
where people would
Yeah.
kind of, think I'm unassuming, or, just kind of shove me aside, you know how kids are at that age, so
Well, let me ask. I mean, were you kind of more of a quiet kid, but then when you did your things, like obviously being the front man for a rock band, you got to be out, you got to
yeah,
have energy, playing sports, running a 50-yard touchdown. I mean, in high school, it's not like people are just going to give you the touchdown.
right, for
So,
sure.
so when you would do these things, were they like, whoa, this guy is packing so much power in like an unassuming body, or were you kind of always kind of like showing off a little bit? Not showing off, not in a cocky way, but
Yeah.
like, you know what I mean? Like showing your personality.
So I think at that point, senior year, I was starting to come out of my shell a lot,
Okay.
and before I was somewhat quiet,
Mm.
nervous, would hesitate a little bit, when talking to certain people, but at that point, once I was like, pretty much screw it, I'm just gonna do me, that's when, I started getting a lot more attention from, certain people, even guys that were like dickheads to me.
Yeah.
They're like, wow, Geoff, like, man, not too many people get the whole front page of the sports section.
Yeah.
You should frame that. And this is coming from a guy that would like, I'm like walking down the hallway and he'd like shoulder
Check
check
you.
me, out of
Yep.
nowhere, and just be like,
Yep.
what are you gonna do? And it's just like, I guess nothing, and
Yeah.
so, but then after that, it was like, man, people kind of, I guess, started to show a little bit more respect, and then I went back into wrestling and I did all right, and, won the home wrestling tournament. So, but I definitely, I had issues with my rebelliousness, and it was not, I was definitely hanging out with like the wrong crowd.
Oh,
I mean, my friends were
Yeah.
my friends before
Hmm.
this whole era, and they were the same friends as like, what we're, during this time, and then even still today,
Yeah.
my two best friends that I hung out with all the time then, I mean, we're in a group chat and we talk
Nice.
and send each other stuff, and
Yep.
now we all do jujitsu. One of them actually just opened up a new gym in
Wow.
Arizona, that started way after me. So I'm really proud of my friends
Yeah.
and like what they've, their involvement in the sport. And
That's pretty
especially,
awesome though.
my friend's kid
Hmm.
killing it in jujitsu tournaments and wrestling tournaments.
Yeah.
So during that time, people were concerned for me, teachers and the sisters, the priests, of course, they're like, oh, just going down a dark path.
Yeah, but it's like your friends really did. They were like this huge factor in you kind of carrying on and doing as well as you did. It's funny, like, yeah, I mean, there's definitely like some kids I hung out with, and some were in like the bad crowd, some were in the good crowd, but like the good friends I made in middle school and high school, like I'm still friends with them today. And, especially when my accident happened, there was like so many friends that were just there for me.
Right.
And it's like I would have never gotten through what I did without them, It's like they don't have to do it. It's not family.
Right.
So, man, I think that's so cool. I just can relate to that a lot.
I honestly, to answer your question, like, what was it? What was it that just kind of put me in a, a state of mind to just do things?
Mhm.
It's probably my friends. Most likely my friends, because
Yeah.
I really leaned on them a lot, and especially, as I mentioned, my parents were very overprotective and limited my social outings. So
Mm.
when I was able to drive, and this is also an issue at home, I would just not come home. You know.
Oh, okay.
And they're like, "You got to come home. You've been gone for 3 days." and it's like, well, I'm just hanging out with my friends.
Yeah.
It's like my friends were like everything to me. And like
Yep.
there was not a second that went by that I wasn't hanging out with my friends and having, our bond strengthen.
Yeah. Yeah.
Through we'd either be out partying or we'd be just chilling, hanging out, and
Mhm.
just hanging out together.
Yeah.
That's all I
Yeah.
really wanted in life, was to just
Totally.
have like my crew of friends to be with.
Totally. I don't know about you, but I think for me too, what I notice now, it's like, because there was the before life where it's like before my accident and the after the accident. And there's one thing about like being with your friends where they just treat you like yourself, like you've always been. They don't see like the disability, they don't see like the hand, they don't see the scar. They're just like, you're just you, man. And I think that's like, for me, it's especially now is like so reassuring. It's like, all right, cool. Like, I feel like a lot's changed about me, but they don't see me that way.
Right.
And I think that, I don't know, I just really appreciate that about friends because like your family, so to speak, will always kind of be responsible for loving you,
Right. Yeah.
and like your work or whatever, they'll just, you're an employee. They don't have to like you per se, but your friends is like, that's their choice. Is their choice to like, we're boys, and
Yes.
I don't know, it just still makes me feel, and I mean, obviously not inside, I don't feel like I'm that different. I still feel normal, but I think, I don't know, maybe that's what it was for you too. You're just like, I'm just me, dude.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, my friends, especially certain friends I knew that didn't see me any different. Like
Mhm.
if someone's like, I sometimes forget you have one hand, Jeff. I'm like, you're a fucking great friend.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah,
I've had
yeah,
other,
definitely.
I've had other, friends who have in the past, like, oh wow, you play video games good for someone who has one hand, or
Right.
guitar with one hand. It's like, how about I just play guitar
Or
well, or I'm good at these video games, or
right.
people trying to like help me do things where it's too obvious, when I'm
Yeah, yeah,
like,
yeah,
hey
yeah.
bro, like chill, like I'm capable of doing it.
Mhm.
So once I feel like I start to get that vibe, I really don't like. And maybe it's just, I gotta also look it up from the outside. Like, everyone's a human, everyone's trying to figure things out, and maybe they are trying to help me out.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's like, hey, there's like a point where we need to, just be, we need to allow people to do it for themselves,
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
not like, hey, you're disabled.
Mhm.
Let me help you. You need help.
Right.
Like I don't have a sign on my head that says I need help. I'm
Yep.
perfectly fine.
Yeah, I love that, man. I think that relates to like so many people, and it's a good reminder. It's like we need to struggle. I think everybody needs to overcome. Like, and you don't know what you're capable of unless you actually try to figure something out for yourself. I love your story, and we even got to like the part where you're like, "All right, I'm into fighting. I'm into jujitsu." Like, I think that's a whole separate journey for you, which I want to touch on. But I think it's important too that we let people try to struggle, do the best they can for themselves so that they can build it up in themselves. And then if they need help or whatever, then you kind of step in and help out.
Right.
So I think, I don't know, I think I saw it a little bit, and this is maybe a too good of a segue here, but like in the documentary, you're like training these kids and you're letting them go for it. And some of them have their own disabilities, but you're just trying to coach them and you're not trying to like help them. You're not trying to like jump in, let me show you how to do it. You're just
Right.
letting them do their thing. Is that something, I don't know, I guess, does that make you a better coach in some ways?
With any students that I've had, whether they've had either physical or mental limitations,
Mhm.
um, my goal for them is to just simply do as everyone else is doing, and because I know they're aware, because they also deal with other kiddos that point out their differences,
Yeah,
that
that's a good
will
point.
say, hey, like, the little girl in the mini doc, her name's Devin. Kids know immediately that she's different.
Mm.
And then there's like another kid who I've worked with. Kids will notice that he has certain, you know, behavioral habits.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to say issues, just behavioral habits. And
Mhm.
so they'll like pick on him, they'll bully him, they'll trigger him,
Mm.
because they know that if he like gets upset or whatever, he's just going to have a meltdown. And
Mhm.
so, whenever I've had to deal with with any type of student that's any of these situations, I try to make them feel like they're like everyone else,
Yeah.
that they're normal, that they can do the same as everyone else. Even Devin,
Mm-hmm.
despite her cerebral palsy, she can do the same class everyone else do. Warm ups,
Mm-hmm.
technique. It's time to train and roll, and then what if we play a game?
Yeah.
She does it all. That's usually my way of doing things with the kiddos. Now, when there is a obvious hindrance, and there's maybe struggling with something, obviously I'll help modify it for them.
Right. Right. Yeah.
But that's when I'll step in when it's like, man, it's really holding them back from the activity. Okay,
Right.
what can we do different that's going to help them feel like they can do it to some degree or level?
To the best of their ability.
Yes.
Yeah, I love that, man. Sorry, we kind of jumped ahead right
No,
there.
all good, all good.
But it's like, okay, help me bridge this gap now. So like high school ends, you got your friends, you know what activities you love doing. You've gone through this rebellious stage. How do you go from high school now to where you are? And I know there's so much story in there,
Yeah.
but kind of like hit us with the high points.
So, I'm about to graduate high school, and even during my senior year of wrestling season, I get introduced to jiu-jitsu. And then once wrestling season ends, I go more into jiu-jitsu, and I pretty much pursue this jiu-jitsu path. And and I'm getting into MMA as well, because
Yeah.
I see the UFC and I see like the Hoist Gracie legendary fights,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm like, man, I want to do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then like wrestling is over, and that's kind of how I see it. Like wrestling is now officially over. I'll
Mhm.
never be good enough to wrestle in college, even though I would have
Mm.
loved to. Even if it was like I'm part of the team but don't compete,
Yeah.
I would have loved to do that, but it just wasn't available for me. So I knew that with jiu-jitsu, I could train year round, I can compete year round, and eventually it could lead me to fighting if that was something I was, truly serious about.
Yeah.
So I go through the ranks. After a year of graduating high school, I moved to San Diego in 2007, and the gym in Yuma is associated with the gym here, which was Fabio Santos. So pretty much I pursue jujitsu and do some like kind of low level MMA, which at the time was pancration fighting, which
Okay.
is like everything you can do everything to the body, just not to the head.
Okay.
So
Okay.
this is
Yeah.
like a very appropriate thing for a lot of people who are interested,
Mhm.
but aren't necessarily sure if they want to go full send.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
do a
Definitely.
few of these matches, fights, and I do okay, and I end up winning a couple of these fights, and and I get promoted throughout jiu-jitsu, and I go actually live in Florida for a year as a brown belt. I come back for
Wow.
maybe a month in
So at
San
this
Diego.
time, you're committed though. You're like at
Yes.
this time, you're like, I'm gonna try to do this professionally.
Yes.
Okay. What's the point where you're like, I'm gonna do this professionally and not like this is a fun hobby and like I really want to get good, but I don't know if I could do this to like make a living. What point are you like, I'm gonna try to do this to make a living?
The first time I think I realized that was 2008, and I would just go compete as a blue belt, and sometimes I even go train at the gym. I would
Hmm.
train maybe like once a week,
Yeah.
and obviously, if money was a factor in my training, so I would show up for like the $5 open mat once a week, and I would go do no gi with these guys that weren't doing no gi as much, I guess, and like you have like these brown and black belts trying to tap me out, and I'm just kind of all over them, and they're like, why aren't you here more? You need to show up more,
Yeah.
kind of like scolding me because their ego got
Yeah.
hurt,
Yeah. Yeah.
so
They're like, what the hell? This guy's a blue belt.
yeah.
Like, what's going on here?
So at that time I was like, okay, I want to compete, I want to do what I can, I want to get my purple belt. I was kind of not doing it the right way. So eventually, once I got, there was like a little segment where I wasn't, training at all, or, I was just kind of hanging out with friends is like when I was 21 years old, you know.
Yeah.
So
Were you just kind of falling back into like things in high school, or you just
so
like,
there was like an ex-girlfriend situation that kind of
ah,
bummed me out, you
got
know.
it.
And
Yeah.
then I was just not sure what I wanted, you know. I was just, I really missed her, and but then hanging out with friends, hanging with a new group of friends, really kind of brought me out of that. And then I was over the partying,
Yeah.
and I'm like, this isn't really giving me any fulfillment.
Mhm.
Like, what do I like? And so I just show up at jujitsu again, and then the master,
Mhm.
professor on the mat.
Yeah.
He's like, he sees me. He's like, Geoff. He's like, hey,
What do
welcome
you?
back.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's like,
Been a
cool,
while, dude.
we're good. So
So he sees you, and then he's like stoked you're back. Does he say like, "Hey, you got to come here more"? Does
yeah,
he?
he just
No.
kind of was like, hey, what's up? Good to see you. And I just start showing up on a regular basis when I can.
Wow.
And then and also before this, I was chasing the purple belt. And
Mhm.
especially when I was competing and not showing up to train or whatever,
Yeah.
because I was really gunning for that belt. I thought, man, if I get the belt, that'll put me in a position where I'm taken more serious,
Hmm.
and I could literally elevate my fighting game.
Hmm.
Which at that time I was very ignorant to the right things to do.
Right.
So when I go back, at the end of 2009, and he sees me, I just start showing up. I don't say anything. I just show up.
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't try to say, hey, I want to do X, Y, and Z. I just show
Yeah.
up.
Or I want to get this belt, or I want to do this
Yeah.
competition. You're just like, I'm just here to learn.
Here to learn, here to train,
Yeah.
here to have an outlet away from parting,
Yeah. Okay.
So,
Gotcha.
it was just kind of nuts at that time. All my friends were either at like, San Diego State or Mesa College. So, it was
Yeah, yeah,
just,
you hang out with them. Yeah, you end up in PB or
yes.
something.
Oh, all the time.
Okay.
So I eventually, I'm just training, and eventually I get my purple belt. My parents are living in San Diego, but my dad gets orders to go move to Florida. So I'm just, doing my thing, and then, Fabio promotes me to the purple belt, and it's like, okay, all right, I feel like I'm somewhat legit now. And
Yeah.
I just kind of go on this, trajectory of training as much as I can,
Hmm.
even if I'm going broke for it. I'm just
Wow.
putting everything, because like
Mm.
before it was like, man, finances were an issue. Now
Mhm.
it's like I get any type of money,
Mhm.
it's going back into jiu-jitsu.
Wow.
And
Wow.
so I'm training as much as I can. I compete, like, I don't know, and in that year I compete like maybe 15, 16 times or something.
Wow.
I do
Jeez.
3 tournaments in 1 month, you know.
Jeez. Yeah.
Um
That's a lot, man. I've only done one jujitsu tournament ever, and I was wrecked after that. It was so hard. So I don't know how you're doing three a month.
that was like 1 month, but
Yeah.
it was like, but there were like times where maybe I'd fit like two in or whatever.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah, it was definitely a lot for that year.
Yeah.
And so I'm like kind of chasing now the world champion in jiu-jitsu career,
Okay. Yeah.
Like I did have MMA as a desire, but now I'm so focused in jiu-jitsu that now I realize, oh, like I need to show up to train, do jiu-jitsu right, go compete as much as possible. And this is what's going to elevate my game. And then also now I find out about the jiu-jitsu world champ life,
Hmm.
and now I'm like, okay, this is what I need to do to be a better MMA fighter,
Right.
So so this kind of sets me up, and then again, I kind of get into some girlfriend drama, and now I have to figure out where I'm at in life.
Every time you're like doing really well, right? Like a girl pops up,
Yeah.
and then it kind of maybe I don't know, maybe from the outside looking in, it seems like you get steered off course. Are these girls like attached to the jujitsu world? Are they just out and about and you're finding them? Because honestly, I don't feel like your wife now, like you and her are so aligned. I
Yes.
think in your goals and what you want out of life, right? And it's interesting. Like there's so many. I mean, I've had so many bad relationships in the past too, where I was like, "Oh, she's it. Like she's gonna be the one."
Right.
And then of course it explodes in this fiery ball, and it all was like terrible. And looking back now, it was like that was not supposed to work.
Right. Yeah.
But at the time, I thought that's what I wanted, and that's what I thought I needed to feel good about my life.
Yes.
when do you start being like, I don't know, I guess like it's hard for me because you're so focused, you're so dedicated to something. What is it about these girls that are kind of pulling you away from the focus?
I think it's just, not wanting to, I guess, lose them. And they didn't feel that jujitsu was, gonna provide anything for me. And they're like,
Mm,
Jeff, you need to go back to school. You need to get a job that provides, health insurance and, like
mhm.
what, like you're just gonna spend your time doing jujitsu and yoga. And it's like, yeah, it's a great time,
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it sounds
so
like a pretty good life to me,
yeah.
but.
So like, I was always, with a girl that definitely they were cool with it. They were like, "Oh wow, you're a fighter, you're a grappler. Oh, you're athletic, you're strong, you can beat someone up."
Yeah.
And
Right,
but then
right,
somewhere down the line their mind changes how they feel about it. And
right.
so
When they see how much time and dedication and effort and all that, and how I think that for maybe a lot of women too, or just partners, it's like when they see how dedicated you are to something, it's hard for them to kind of like the thing that attracts them is not what keeps them because your focus is on that thing and
yes,
it's not on them.
right.
And then all of a sudden when they realize it's not on them, I think, yeah, that creates a lot of tension.
Definitely. And I think it's, for them it was, like you said, not on them. What they would tell me is that I needed something that would provide more for myself, but it was
Mm.
really more of a safety net for them.
Yeah,
you know
yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
it's like, oh yeah,
Exactly.
I should be making more money. Oh yeah, I should be able to like afford a bigger,
Mm,
apartment or
mm,
whatever. It
mm.
sounds like more of like a youth
That's a you
thing.
thing. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
I'm good with this.
yeah.
Like, I feel good here. Yeah.
So they weren't satisfied with like, the life I had chosen. So, when right before I got my brown belt, I kind of went through this, ex-girlfriend thing, a different girlfriend, and I definitely got some pain out of that. And
Mm.
and so I was, I kind of was, in a weird place, but then I like kind of knocked it off a lot sooner than I had before in the past.
Alright.
And then I go back
Nice.
into jujitsu and I'm like training, competing as much as I can. But then eventually I find myself in a financial hole, because it's just at this time, it's just I don't know what's going on with the places that I'm working at.
Mm.
It's just not working out. So I
Okay.
eventually move out to Florida to be with my parents, and I find a gym out there that's really tough.
Mhm.
And so they actually kind of make me a little bit sharper in my jujitsu, because it was like, man, it was like sink or swim, you know.
Okay.
The vibe at Fabio's was like, yeah, people are getting after it, but it was like not as intense as this gym in Florida. It was like
Mm.
these guys, they were great coaches, but they were, man, they would demean a guy, if it
Mm.
made them laugh,
Alright.
so
Wow.
and it's like, man, you just got whooped by a blue belt or a purple belt, like you should just they would
Yeah,
say
what are
s-
you even doing here? Yeah.
they would say some like pretty vile things or pretty questionable things like,
Got yeah.
hey, just walk off a cliff tomorrow, like
Damn.
you suck at
Wow.
jujitsu. And
Yeah.
obviously it was all in like,
In
good fun.
jest and yeah, yeah. But I mean, because it could go either way, right? Like for you, it seemed like you're like, all right, well, I'm gonna show them. I'm
Yeah.
here, like I'm learning some new things. But for some other people, it might be like, well, I can't handle this. Like that's
Yeah.
I don't want that.
When a lot of people did, they were or they could not handle it. I mean, I talked to other like fighters or grapplers in the area. They're like, yeah, I went there. I don't like the vibe very much. I'm like,
Yeah.
well, yeah, but if you want to get good at jiu-jitsu or MMA,
Mm,
that is the spot.
right.
So either take it or leave it,
Yeah, yeah.
because there is really nothing else at that time in
Hmm.
that small area
Hmm.
that would provided anything of like real good standard in either
Yeah.
sport. And especially they even had a wrestling coach who was a two-time All-American,
Wow.
so during that time I did judo, I did MMA, I did wrestling, I did jiu-jitsu, gi and no gi. I even
Wow.
did the self-defense once in a while. And so I really proved myself in that gym. And even when it came down to a promotion, like all the other guys were getting promoted, but I was still a brown belt under Fabio.
Mm,
And I was like, do I accept this stripe? And of course it was cool. But even with one of the instructors, he was like, I don't know if we need to give him a stripe. but everyone vouched for you. They're like, no, Geoff is one of the top hardest workers in this facility.
Wow.
Competes, does every class, doesn't stick to just jujitsu. Like, no, he's earned it. Like, he is. We're not giving it to him. He's earned it.
That's cool.
So
Yeah.
so I definitely put myself in a good spot in that gym.
Yeah.
So
No, that's amazing, man. You like you said, you did earn it, and you had to convince a lot of people because you were the outsider coming in.
yes,
You had trained at a different gym. They don't know what those standards are there.
right.
You like to them maybe they see the disability. So there's a lot that you had to prove.
A
And
lot
you
of
earned it.
military dudes too. So for
Oh,
me
okay.
to go in
Mhm.
as who is this kid? Who's this short, one-handed kid
Mhm.
from California? This brown belt.
Right.
A lot of these guys, I was like literally the only brown belt in the gym.
Oh,
So
wow.
now they had to like listen to me
Mm.
when it came to like certain things on the mat.
Mhm.
I ran the warm up every practice. They had to do it all.
Oh, wow.
And some of them would like complain about it, because I do like, okay, you guys are trying to like kind of test me or size me up. We're
Yeah.
gonna do a 30-minute warm up every class now. So,
Okay, just wreck them.
so but of course these guys are military, so it's like I'm pretty much like the officer now
Mm.
that they have to deal with. I'm the young officer
Okay.
that like, this is how it is in the military, my old enlisted guys have to now listen to the young officers. So this is kind of like how I related the situation. And after a while they did show respect. They did acknowledge that I was, skilled
Mhm.
and legit, so
Yeah. Man, you've been like proving it, proving it all these times. You found ways to just kind of keep showing up to, like everybody, sometimes you get distracted on something, you go back to your focus. What brings you back to San Diego? And I eventually want to get into like how the documentary came to be.
So, after Florida, I mean, my dad was gonna get stationed back in Yuma for the third time, and so now I know I'm leaving, and I'm gonna come back, and I'm gonna actually, I'm gonna go live in Yuma, but I want to be in San Diego for a month by myself, hanging out. I miss San Diego for the whole year. I'm in Florida, and at the end of that month, I get my black belt. Because I
Wow.
tell Fabio like, hey, I'm actually gonna be moving back to Yuma. I'm gonna
Mhm.
be back at the gym that I started off at as a white belt.
Yeah.
And that gym was under Fabio. So he's like, okay. And I had already traveled for competition from Florida all the way to California twice.
Okay.
Actually,
Okay.
3 times.
Did you see a lot of people at that gym?
Yeah. Oh,
Eh,
from the Florida gym?
from the California gym?
Oh yeah,
When you
definitely. Yeah.
okay, okay.
When I came to Worlds, or I came and did Worlds and Pan Ams and Nationals,
Wow.
there were people from the gym competing,
Mm,
and I had Fabio coaching me.
okay.
So,
That's
because I
cool.
was repping the team,
Mhm.
even though I was in Florida,
That's
and
cool that you guys stayed in that much of contact, and he was like, you guys are still tight that way.
yeah, we were then, not these days though, but
Yeah, but
but
back.
nonetheless,
Mhm.
so I get my black belt, and I spend a year in Yuma trying to teach as much as I can, trying to train as much as I can, and during this first year, I'm just going on a rampage with competing,
Mhm.
and I pretty much fight all these world champions that like I've idolized for years,
Yeah.
like the Mendes bros, Kyle Terra. I even fight Ben Henderson, who's the UFC lightweight champ at the
Yeah.
time,
Wow.
and a ton of other world champs, that could name, but obviously don't want to get too caught up in the the
Yeah,
name
yeah.
drop.
Nah, I mean, you named some ballers right there,
Yeah,
so
so,
I get it.
but eventually, I find my way back to San Diego in October of 2013, and then the following month, I place finally as a black belt at a world event, and this is when I become a bronze no gi world medalist,
Wow.
and this is probably my highest accolade at that time,
Mhm.
and even like, still that still holds merit, in the sport, even till now.
Yeah.
um but then eventually, after that I get diagnosed with testicular cancer, and then I have to deal with,
Yeah.
Something crazy yet again.
Okay, wait, let's talk about that. What goes through your head? You just got to your highest medal ever, your highest accolade. You get this diagnosis. One, how did you know you had like something was wrong?
So I had a huge mass in one of my testicles,
Okay.
and at first I thought, oh, that could be cool. We could like make some webcam money or whatever. um, but just
I
some,
love it. You gotta entertain the thought,
yeah.
You're like, hey, maybe we can make some cash.
But then it's like, but this doesn't seem right. This seems like there might be something wrong with it.
Yeah.
And eventually I get an ultrasound, I get diagnosed, and my dad's squadron doc, he does like a physical exam, but he's like, ultimately we can't determine without an ultrasound. He calls me after the ultrasound. I'm supposed to be on my way back to San Diego. And he's like, "Are you sitting down?" And I'm like, "Ah, shit."
Yeah.
I get the surgery the following month, and luckily it's a mild tumor, so I
Yeah.
don't have to do any chemo or radiation.
That's
But
good.
then now again, I'm sidelined.
Yeah. Well, sorry, I'm curious that month in between because I think a lot about, it's a time from like when you get devastating news or something devastating happens to the point of like I'm back doing my thing. I'm always curious about that middle part. And so like what are you thinking to yourself or like what are the thoughts that are popping up in that part where you're like, shit, I'm doing super good, but now I have this terrible diagnosis.
There was a lot of just the unknown. Like what's gonna happen?
Yeah.
Is my and when I was by myself, like I had to go down to Yuma for Thanksgiving. I had family there, and
Hmm.
it was okay, but there was just too much quiet time to the point where like when everyone was asleep
Hmm.
and I was by myself,
Yeah.
I would just find myself like breaking down emotionally
Mm.
and like thinking, man, my parents are gonna have to like sell everything, sell the house. Also, this house that I'm in, my at this point, my parents and I had been in this house. Well, they had been in there for a year, and this is my dad's first house ever that he had
Wow.
bought because we were always on military housing,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and so I'm like, man, the first house my dad has to buy, he's gonna have to sell to
Mhm.
like pay for my treatment. So I'm like thinking all the worst things,
Yeah.
and it's like, man, and what's my life gonna be? I'm gonna have to get on chemo, radiation. I'm gonna hate life.
Mhm.
I've gotten to this point in jujitsu finally as a black belt, not only black belt, but keep competing against the best guys in the world. I have now a world title.
Yeah.
Now that's all gonna go
It's
away,
gone.
and so
Yeah.
it was very hard to deal with. And
Yeah.
but when I was back in San Diego hanging out with friends and like the girl I was dating at the time, I was fine.
Okay.
I was distracted, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
was totally fine, but it was when I had that alone time
Mhm.
away from my friends
Mhm.
and everything else, I would think too much. And
Yeah.
so
Huh.
but ultimately it was like, all right, we got to do this. We got to take care of, we have to get the surgery. We have to just get
Mhm.
it out of my body. So
Totally. It
there
was
was
just
like
like
a
one step at a time. Let's just do
yeah,
this. Let's just do that. And that's how you were trying to like just kind of operate.
yeah.
Just keep checking boxes basically.
And because of
Yeah.
all my prior health history that I've had, with the surgeries and all that,
Mhm.
when I went into my surgery to get the tumor removed, it's just like everything else, just like all the other ones, but
Yeah.
obviously a little bit more intense. And I had to
Yeah.
tell myself, you're in the United States. This is 2013. We are at the peak of medical advancement at this
Yeah.
time.
Right.
Like, you're going to be fine,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So,
I love it. I love it.
yeah.
Yeah, dude. I think that's super important. I mean, yeah, I've, said on the show before, it's like I've had like over 50 surgeries and procedures and stuff. But it does get to a point where it's like, whatever, I'm going to wake up. I'm going to be super sore.
Yeah.
They're going to give me great medicine. I'll
Yes.
take it when I need it. And whatever, screw it. We'll just keep going. And yeah, I love that you were kind of tapping into it too, because now when I got a surgery, it's like, I don't even care. It's like, whatever, this
Yeah.
is what I need to do. Fine, fuck it. I'll be out for a couple weeks, whatever. But it doesn't bother me. The first couple surgeries, or I don't even remember them, but like when I could start consciously remembering how to get surgeries, I'd be so nervous about it. Like, oh God, how's this gonna go? But now, yeah, it's like you're gonna be good. The
Yeah.
doctors are good, the medicine's good.
Yes.
You're gonna be all right. And yeah. So anyways, I appreciate you bringing that up.
No, for sure. I mean,
Yeah.
even now, it's because, I still have to have like a colonoscopy, or, once a year, or once every couple of years. I know that older men are petrified of this. And I'm
Yeah.
like my pops, he was like deathly scared.
Yeah.
Some men have this weird thing with like, their,
Oh,
the back
sure.
end.
Going
Yeah.
up the tuchus is
Yeah.
not. Yeah. I mean, for a lot of us, that's not something we think about too often. So,
So like an older man who's like super manly, like something's going to go up in there. No, so he's like
Right.
sweating bullets. I'm like, Dad, it's gonna be good.
Right.
Enjoy those legal drugs.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Because
Yeah,
you're gonna
yeah.
only get that during that time. So like, take it, enjoy it,
Right.
fight it.
Yeah.
Like they say not to fight it. Oh, I'm gonna fight it for a few seconds so I can just feel like I'm floating for like a few seconds.
Yeah, I think that's something you think about too when you've been through a lot of surgeries and everything. It's like you kind of just enjoy the process, whatever it is. And I know it sounds crazy because so many people are like so scared of the pain, but it's like you already know it's coming.
Yeah.
Like the pain's going to be there. So for me, it is kind of just about like, whatever, dude, just
Yeah.
enjoy the ride and like, all right, yeah, I guess I'll take whatever the codeine or the whatever the
Yes.
medicine is. And, you don't always get that kind of relief. And I'm not into like crazy drugs or anything. So it's like, might as well just enjoy it while you
Exactly.
can have it. Yeah. But I think this is amazing, and you get through that. Tell me about how the documentary comes up, because I mean it's really making waves. I really love how Matt and Leah are like doing this around San Diego, and how it's just really sharing your story. Yeah, tell me about when this even got approached to you.
So I was working out at Electrum and in 2020, and then I went back in 2021. 2020, of course, as we all know, is a crazy time, and
Yeah.
all three gyms I was training at all shut down in December of. I mean, everything had shut down already,
Mhm.
like in March when everything was closed down.
Yeah.
But gyms were starting to operate again, under the radar.
Yeah.
And so in December of 2020, I had already been competing, or I'd already been training, competing, teaching at all three gyms:
Wow.
Electrum,
Mhm.
or Autos, Electrum, and then Alpine.
Mhm.
And then in December, there was like, a spike in COVID cases. So
Mhm.
all three of these facilities,
Shut
shut down. And so I kind of, I paused my membership at Electrum, and then eventually, I find my way back in 2021.
Mhm.
And, Alex Sterner, he's like, hey, would you be interested in doing like a short piece for Electrum?
Mhm.
I'm going to introduce you to Matt Meredith and Leah De Leon.
Mhm.
They're good people. They work out here.
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, sure. That sounds great. Definitely good for me because, going back into, I joined Autos in 2019. I had somewhat of a rough little patch in a couple years prior to that. So my
Mhm.
jujitsu wasn't what it is now,
Yeah. Got
And
it.
so I'm trying to get back out there in the scene, and I'm
Mhm.
like, yeah, this is great. This will definitely give me more exposure, and I can put
Mm.
more content out there and
Yeah.
really, be about it like everyone else is, So we meet up and, we have a conversation, and pretty much like the conversation we're having now. And I give him a little, nutshell of what I've gone through in my life. And they pretty much tell Alex Sterner, hey, there's more to this than just a 3 to 5 minute like
Little
promo
piece.
vid,
Right.
for Electrum. There's a story here,
Mhm.
Not saying that the other athletes, they don't have their stories, but they really felt impacted by this one,
Yeah.
and
Yeah, absolutely.
especially, the adversity that I've dealt with, either the one hand or the health issues,
Yeah.
or even what my life was at that time. They're like, "Oh man, you're an instructor, you are a practitioner and competitor. Let's try to capture all these three things in one piece.
Right.
So the documentary up until last year when I was let go from Alpine, I mean, that was what I consider one of the highest points in my jiu-jitsu career as an instructor and
Mhm.
competitor.
Wow. And it's crazy. Yeah. They capture that in the documentary and everything too. And yeah, I mean, even with things with your wife at that moment, I really kind of love the scene where you're kind of standing there watching her go. And I mean, just that moment of like, you think they're coming back, you believe they will, but also it's just that moment of like, loss and uncertainty again. You've done an amazing job, I think, of just kind of dealing with a lot of that
Yeah.
and then still showing up and still being like kind of finding your North Star, which has been jujitsu or which has been training and just kind of refocusing on that. It's been amazing, man.
Thank
It's
you.
really cool. I really appreciate all the behind the scenes of that. I mean, because I think they captured it extremely well. But there's still so much more to you. So I appreciate
Of course.
everything you've kind of already shared up to this point, dude. But all right, we're kind of getting close to the time here. I want to ask you three
Yes.
questions that I ask everybody when we're wrapping up. And are you ready for kind
Yes.
of the hot fire round? All right, let's do this. So one of the first questions I ask is, currently in your life, what is giving you the most amount of peace?
Currently, the what's giving me the most amount of peace is just staying busy, staying productive, having these type of experiences, these new
Mhm.
experiences with cool people. The film and the networking and just meeting new people that I probably wouldn't have never met had it not been for the film. So I'm
Yeah.
really grateful for all that, and so that's been giving me a lot of peace recently is the film and me just trying to stay busy with everything else.
Yeah. Love it, man. Yeah. Also, I mean, I don't know about you. I feel like one thing we kind of danced around, I've talked about this on a video before, but it's like being useful. And I feel like you're a person that just wants to be useful. Is that along the lines, or are you just, is it purely like, I got to keep going?
I definitely want to be somewhat of an asset to the people around me and especially in the community. If I can have, if I'm able to give and, be able to contribute in some way to our community and society as a whole, I feel like I'm doing my part, in my life, and it's not just about me at this point. I realize that I have a journey and, you know, the journey that I've had in my life has helped inspire other people,
Yeah. Yeah.
So if this is where we're at, I need to accept that and have a little bit more responsibility with it
Hmm.
and really try to maximize my potential to truly, do as much as I can.
Yeah. Yeah. Make the biggest difference for sure, man.
Yes.
Yeah. I think you're doing it. I think that's an incredible answer. All right. So if somebody right now is going through their lowest moment, their darkest time, what's one piece of advice you would give them?
Meet up with your friends, do some fun things,
Hmm.
make sure you talk to your friends. Don't beat a dead horse. you know
Okay. Yeah.
At
Yeah.
some point, it's like, because I've been, guilty of this where I just get stuck and I'm sulking too much and, and just dwelling on whatever issue that I've, that
That
has,
you're feeling and yeah.
that has like, for what I feel has like crippled me with depression,
Hmm.
So, but yeah, just get out there, do some fun things with your friends, that's really what it's about.
Yeah. I love that. I think it's good. I think so much as adults we forget we have to go have fun and play, and it's not all work, work, work. Although I mean it's good if you are focused on work, but I think you need those moments of kind of thinking about something else so that you can really focus in on what you got to do. So I think that's fantastic advice, man. Is there anything for you? Where can people find you? Where can they support you? I heard that there's like a new gym coming up. Is that still in the works? Or yeah, where can people find you and support you?
So you can find me on Instagram, Geoff Real, and that's spelled Geoff Real, just to you're not confused with the J American Jeff. But now we also, my friend Mark Gitman and I, we opened up a facility in the Scripps Ranch area. It's called Scripps Ranch Jiu Jitsu. That's where I'm currently teaching at. And, I'm pretty much just training when I can, where I can. But yeah, finding me on Instagram is like the way to go.
Cool. Oh, right on, Geoff. You've been incredible, man. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for just like coming out here, being vulnerable, sharing your story, the highs, the lows, like what's worked for you. You are an inspiring dude, just the way you are. It's just like you're just so strong-willed. I appreciate the hell out of it. Thank you for your time. Yeah, man. Let's bring it in. Yep.
Thank you, brother. Appreciate it.
All right. Geoff's story is proof that resilience isn't about what you're missing. It's about what you make with what you have. A huge mahalo to Geoff for sharing his journey and to all of you for sticking around to the end of the episode. If his story moved you, share this episode with someone who might need to hear it. And be sure to follow us on all social media at SickBurnPod for behind-the-scenes content and weekly inspiration. As always, take care of yourself, if you can someone else, and keep exploring the bright side to life's darkest moments. Aloha.